Thousand Autumns, is a Meng Xi Shi novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Extra number 11. The side door of the Daoguan was unlatched. The Osman thus were in full bloom, a gentle breeze and drifting clouds, the sky refractive as glass, clear as ice. Clusters of golden yellow, light yellow, and white blooms bursting from the branches, heavy-headed, weighing down the branch, which at this moment also had several riotous birds as guests. Branches swaying, flower petals followed rustling in their descent, fluttering all over the head of the deer resting underneath. The deer shook its head, and sneezed. To the side on the short table, the as yet unpoured cups received a scattering of petals, the teapot was simmering over a small fire, brewing tea. The fragrance of the tea was interwoven with Osmanthus notes, the deeper and lighter tones achieving a remarkable balance, allowing people to relax completely. Osmanthus falling tea brewing, the Daoguan was still. No doubt it was a scene that brought joy to the senses, enough to be in a painting, but Yang Guang was not paying attention to any of this. He was watching the person brewing the tea. The other was wearing Daoist robes, hair in a top knot, the most plain manner of dressing, but Yang Guang had to admit, the simpler the style, the more it brought out that person's qualities. From the first time he met this person, how many years had it been? Yang Guang didn't dwell on the matter, but growing up from a child to a young man it must have been at least several years in the interim. This person was truly like a celestial, showing no sign of the accumulating years. Yang Guang was aware that once martial cultivation passed a certain stage, it would definitely be the case of youth that stayed. Technically in the Jianghu there were no shortage of people like this, but on account of this person being very good looking, every time Yang Guang saw him he would spend extra time looking, thus he had a strong impression of this man. The back gardens are plain, and are unsuited for esteemed guests. If seeking guidance or immortality, please enter through the front doors. The clear voice sounded from behind the door. Yang Guang couldn't help but feel awkward and glanced to the person accompanying him. The latter was looking down and frowning, his expression calm. He demonstrated no impatience on account of having waited with Yang Guang for so long, neither did he show any discomfort at having been called out. He might actually have been an aimless guest of Yang Guang's, having suppressed his sense of presence to its lowest. He'd been discovered, so Yang Guang laughed, and pushed the door wide open to enter. This lord saw the serenity of the Daoguan, and so casually came this way. I didn't realize I walked this far, disturbing Jinren's repose, please forgive me. He said this, but did not make any signs of retreating. Instead he barged in loudly. He must have believed that the Daoguan's master could not refuse him. Yang Guang's life had been smooth sailing since his youth. His doting parents made it so that there were very few things that did not go his way. Naturally his character was a bit self-centered. It turns out to be Lord Jin. Please come in. Shen Qiao smiled, no hint of discontent. Yang Guang assumed this was because the other did not have the guts to show any discontent. If Su and Dushan wanted to maintain their foothold in Chang'an, they would need the continued support of the court. As he had just been standing outside staring rudely, Shen Qiao did not get up to greet him formally. Yang Guang had no face to insist on this small detail. He flipped the bottom of his robe up and sat down opposite the other. Now it was as if he was no longer the guest but the host. He gestured to the person next to him to also take a seat. Just now from outside I saw Jinren brewing tea, the fragrance alluring. My feet wouldn't stay in place. I think Jinren will not blame us for this sudden intrusion. Shen Qiao smiled, of course not. And who might this guest be? Yang Guang, intentionally, it is I who forgot to make introductions. This is Hideashi's disciple monk Wushi. Technically he would be my father's Shidi. Hichanji was from Tiantai sect, he was the Shikshundi of Fei and Switing. In the last couple of years, in order to subdue the Buddhist sects, Yang Jian had to use his position as emperor to acknowledge Hichanji as Shifu, demonstrating his respect for the Buddhist sects. The reputation and standing of the Buddhist sects rose like a boat with the water level. In short order their prominence was unparalleled. This monk Yushiu, he certainly did not have a single hair on his head, but he was dressed casually and not in monk robes, so after Shen Qiao heard who he was, his expression revealed a bit of surprise. Yang Guang, bringing a monk into a Daoist sect, I hope Genren won't be displeased. Shen Qiao smiled, of course not, all visitors are guests, if Lord Jin and Zhangji do not mind, try the crude tea that this poor one has brewed. Yang Guang, a dashing smile, tea brewed by Genren himself, it's worth a try regardless, only then can I go find my parents later to brag. He and Yushiu received their cups and bowed their heads to take a sip. The tea was indeed crude, although it carried Osman-thus notes, it wasn't enough to cover up the bitterness. Yang Guang was not accustomed to it at all, one sip and he had to frown. He put down his cup, glancing one more time at Yushiu, the latter was serenely holding his cup, sip after sip, not hurried nor slow, he drank it all. Yang Guang derided himself, it looks like it's me who does not appreciate the art of tea brewing, this tea is wasted on me. Shen Qiao, Lord Jin is too kind, since the tea leaves have already turned into tea, then it's for people to drink, if Lord Jin drinks it, or a passerby drinks it, after being consumed it's still present, if not consumed it's also present, the question is not about what is wasted or not wasted. Yang Guang paused, for the moment he did not know how to continue this conversation. It was monk Yushiu who spoke, Genren's words contain Buddhist teachings. Shen Qiao smiled, Buddhism and Daoism are two paths open to each other, it looks like Zhangji has some fate yet with the Daoist sections. Yushiu also smiled, people say that Genren is not one for words, unwilling to teach in a public forum, this poor one sees now that this is not true, Genren is a skilled debater. He had delicate features, with this smile his face was like a new bloom, a sudden beam of sunlight. Yang Guang, after Yushiu became Hidashi's disciple, he trained in martial arts with Shivo Fei Dashi, it's said that he's a genius the likes of which has not been seen in some decades at Tiantai sect, his caliber exceeding that of Switing in his youth. I was born late, unable to see the monk Switing's prowess with my own eyes, would I have the luck today of seeing Genren advising Yushiu in an exchange or two. Shen Qiao's gaze swept past the two of them, landing on the teacups in front, he said blandly, with Yushiu Zhangji's caliber, he's sure to accomplish much in the next few years, this poor one is untalented, how could I dare give casual pointers? This was a refusal. Yang Guang was quite upset. He had purposefully tried to garner favor with Shen Qiao and Yan Wushi, these two, the latter was hard to track down, on the rare occasion they would meet, he wouldn't give Yang Guang any face anyway. Yang Guang had even complained about this to his parents, who knew the parents who always gave him his way this time were not on his side, this made Yang Guang even more vexed. As for Shen Qiao, Yang Guang had paid him several personal visits, every time he'd be given the cold shoulder, or a polite refusal, it was as if Shen Qiao was completely uninterested in establishing ties with Lord Jin, he was always courteous but distant. For Yang Guang, who considered himself a proud son of the heavens, it was undoubtedly several invisible slaps in the face. Yang Guang had been so upset on several occasions that he'd smashed things in his own quarters, the vexation building up even more, almost to point of an unobtainable obsession. The only solace was that Suan and Huanyu sect, although they made no motion of accepting Yang Guang's good graces, they also didn't seem interested in getting closer to the crown prince. Looking at Shen Qiao's handsome and kind side profile, Yang Guang felt defeated, as well as resentful. Shen Qiao had saved his life, this he was aware, that year when that scoundrel Chen Gong abducted him to escape the palace. It was Shen Qiao who intercepted and saved him, but Yang Guang felt that in these years his parents had given back enough to Suan Han, enough to settle the debt of saving his life, so in the depths of his heart, he didn't feel particularly indebted to Shen Qiao. This interval of fate between them was for Yang Guang more useful as leverage to gain a closer allegiance, so that Suan Han would be more inclined towards him. It was a pity, Shen Qiao was always tepid, Suan Han when it came to Lord Jin, also kept their distance. Thoughts were thoughts, but Yang Guang wouldn't dare display any sign of discontent. Genren is too humble, with respect to the martial generations of the Jianghu. Wushi is your Wanbei, it's only natural for him to receive pointers from you. If you don't want to, of course I won't force you. In a few days is the Chongyang festival. I've already indicated to His Highness that on that day I'll be hosting a banquet on Quiwishan. Would Genren be willing to grace that banquet with your presence? This lord would surely provide an enthusiastic welcome. Pausing here, he thought Shen Qiao might decline on account of there being too many people there, and so pointedly added, there will be no extra guests at the banquet, only prominent members of the Buddhist and Daoist sects from the capital. In the conversational style of the Wei Jin scholars, it will be an elegant affair. Shen Qiao was apologetic. It's a shame, today this poor one will set off to return to Suan Han. In a couple more days I'll probably have arrived back on Suan Han, it will be impossible for me to attend. I hope Lord Jin will not blame me. Rage flashed across Yang Guang's face, but he recovered quickly, smiling. He drained the tea from his cup in one gulp. It's me who's made things difficult, Genren need not pay it any attention. Only after Yang Guang and Wushi had taken their leave, did someone from behind the pillars speak up idly, you've really insulted him. Shen Qiao didn't bother turning his head, he took a few more sips of his tea, and said, and yet Yan Zongju will hide inside like a turtle retreating into its shell, forcing me to be the bad guy. Yan Wushi laughed, who let Shen Daozang be the one to carry all the compassion for the world, his heart every kindness. If I made an appearance, then that Wushi would probably have been unable to leave through Suan Duguan's front doors. Shen Qiao gave him a look, and didn't say more. Yan Wushi bent over, his lips ghosting his cheek, then traced their way across, leaving a trail of hot breath, stopping finally by Shen Qiao's ear. I wanted to return on time to spend Kixi with you, but I wasn't able to make it, at least I won't miss winter solstice. Shen Qiao was slightly flushed, who knew if he was overwhelmed by the heat of the other's breath or by sheer embarrassment. You were gone a long while this time. Yan Wushi chuckled lowly, and continued to flirt with him, so Shen Daozang missed me. Shen Qiao was struck by this, his blush deepening, you know that's not what I meant. Then what do you mean? Yan Wushi seemed to derive great joy from teasing him, and also seemed to be very interested in his ear. He bit it and wouldn't let go, the shell of his ear to his earlobe, was quickly licked wet and teased. Shen Qiao's body was frozen in place, as if someone cast a spell on him, immobilizing him completing. Did you, with difficulty he summoned conscious thought, go deep into Tuja territory? No, I went to Goguryeo. Yan Wushi could still spit out a full sentence, because it was his hands that were occupied exploring an unmentionable place, encountering no resistance he did as he pleased. Shen Qiao, Goguryeo? What were you doing there? Yan Wushi, they grow ginseng there, It's one of the commodities that Huanyu sect does business in. I took a detour to East Tiju, and decided to go since it's along the way. Duan Vinyang is doing pretty good in East Tiju, Tulan Kagan values his talents, he can be considered the second Hulagu. Shen Qiao shook his head, his heart is not in martial arts cultivation, so he will never become the second Hulagu, but that monk Yushiu just now, he's very interesting. Yan Wushi, what, I'm not enough for you, you still want the monk. In short order Shen Qiao became completely red, he gaped, upset and wanting to dispute this, but not knowing where to begin, he was truly pitiful and very cute. Yan Wushi couldn't help but roar with laughter, he picked up the person horizontally, and carried him inside. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.